15, 20 years, data pours in on the health benefits of Mediterranean diet. If you think about it, all dietary, whether you're studying low fat, Atkins, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, any diet you can think of, who's going to really pay the large sums of money to study that? That's there's no drug company behind it. So really, the medical schools had to rely on government grants. So it was hard at first to get the funds to study this, but the more they studied the Mediterranean diet, the more benefits they found. Now, for those who haven't heard of Cochrane, Cochrane is like saying the word God in medicine. Cochrane does unbiased reviews, no axe to grind, no outside money, and will do very strong analysis of data. Cochrane usually will give grades like A grade is strong data, B is good data, C is consensus data, D and F are bad data. So they found strong evidence, in their opinion, in A, that the Mediterranean diet improved cardiovascular risk factors. I can't speak for after 2013, maybe James can comment, but when they did this in 2013, I believe it was the first diet that they ever found strong data that would improve your cardiovascular risk profile. Since this is a journal that James probably reads, I'm guessing, had a 2013 article. Of course, back then he was probably in high school. So, so they compared side by side the Mediterranean diet, low carb, high protein, vegan, vegetarian. They didn't have a special low fat diet. They threw low fat in with the vegan one and a high fiber, because all those theoretically should be healthy. They found that for cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar, they tracked all three of them. Three of them improved all three, but only three of them. And it was Mediterranean, the low carb, and the high protein. The low fat, ironically, didn't improve all three. I think they improved two of the three. This type of study has been reproduced many times. Because it's his journal, I've not talked to James about this, but I love his thoughts on this.
And so the key here and why I love the Mediterranean diet is what that specifies is whole foods, right? Because really what the key is whole foods. And the analogy I like to give my patients is, I don't, or you don't come home from work and turn on Netflix and grab the bag of apples and go, oh, I just can't stop eating these apples, right? Oh man, give me a fourth, give me a fifth, right? But if it's a bag of Cheez-Its, ice cream, right, or candy, something devoid of fiber, not a whole food, you're going to keep eating, right? And so this is the power of even comparing a lot of these diets. If they're not whole foods, then you're missing the mark, right? And so that's where you're looking at a Mediterranean diet, which, yes, it has fat, yes, it has carbs, but they're whole food sources, and therefore it makes it very, very special. Even compared with my well-known bias of being vegan, however, there's even a specification of vegan versus whole food plant-based, because Oreos are vegan, right? Lots of cereals now are vegan, lots of desserts are vegan. Vegan does not equal health, okay? So that's what's really special with this, and that's what we're looking at, and very consistent research on that.
So let's compare some of those diets. When you say low carb, for those who have a little bit of gray around the temples, you remember the first big one was Atkins. Then I think there was a South Beach, which to me was just another version of Atkins. And there's millions of other low carb, no carb diets. On a low carb diet, they do work. They work as far as weight gain, not as far as other stuff. Weight loss, I should say. It restricts refined starch and sugar. He was just saying, cupcakes is refined, white bread is refined. Those things are not on a low-carb diet. Low-fat, vegan, vegetarian emphasizes the whole foods he was talking about, direct from nature and avoiding the so-called bad fats. Paleo, which is so popular now, I think my understanding, again, if somebody's into paleo, correct me if I'm wrong, you're eating like cavemen, right? Whatever cavemen used to eat is part of the paleo diet. So no processed foods, natural plants. Meats are okay, but very lean, because the cavemen would only eat lean parts of the buffalo they killed, I guess. I don't know. So that's paleo. What about Mediterranean? This emphasizes foods direct from nature, especially plants, however makes allowances for lean meats, emphasizes healthful oils, really only one, olive oil, especially monounsaturated oil. Okay. I'll give the microphone to James here.
I'm like chomping at the bit here. So here you guys can see, and I want to make a big point. This is something I always tell my patients, where big difference between weight gain and healthy body fat, or what I like to call body composition, right? So I can say, hey guys, I got a great program. You're going to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks of weight. Does that mean body fat? No. It means glycogen from your muscle, means water, it means maybe some muscle itself, maybe some fat. That's all gonna come together and be weight. Okay, that's not really what you want. And that's why, there's a lot of pills out there, there's a lot of programs out there that say weight loss, but not sustainable long-term healthy body fat loss. That's really what we all want. We all want to maintain a healthy body fat for the rest of our lives, not lose weight. So there's a big, big difference. So this is what the Mediterranean diet does, and this is what makes it a little different from low carb or other fad diets. There's so many out there, keto and paleo, right? Paleo, that's a whole nother deep dive rabbit hole, but that's a big, big difference.
So what is the Mediterranean diet? Well, one of the knocks on it, I'll summarize the knocks in a slide pretty soon, is that there really is no one source. South Beach, you can buy the book and read about it. Even Atkins, you can look up exactly what the Atkins diet is. Mediterranean diet doesn't have a Bible, doesn't have a for sure thing. It's more philosophic, I guess. So I'm going to give you general categories. But a very popular ingredient that's in every version is olive oil. It probably goes beyond the fact that it's plant-based, probably goes beyond the fact that it's from olives as opposed to other vegetables. It goes to the omega-3s, it benefits the ratio. It goes to the oxidation process. Polyphenols, which prevent your body from getting inflammatory markers, are probably more in that. I'm suspecting, with all the research being done, that this lecture given 20 years from now will have much better data of why olive oil has helped so much in the Mediterranean diet. Because I agree a little with James, we were talking before the talk. On the surface, olive oil it's good, but it shouldn't be that good. But that's the one factor every study shows, is olive oil is plentiful and popular on the Mediterranean diet. So omega-3 fatty acids are from fish primarily. Omega-6 are from vegetables. And on the top of your head, you say, well, they're both good. Well, they're both good, but back when we were hunters, back in the paleo days, omega-6 to omega-3 was 1-to-1. But now they know what they didn't know back then. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory, and omega-6 is considered pro-inflammatory. We don't want inflammation. Inflammation in our body is what triggers the plaque to cause the heart attack and trigger regular cells to become cancer cells. So ideally, you'd like a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Omega-6, I would think, is in something like corn oil and vegetable oil. I'll let you talk on this. If I'm wrong, correct me. Omega-3s are more like fatty fish type of oils. So the Mediterranean diet would emphasize shifting the ratio away from, I believe my reading told me, a typical American diet is like 14 or 20-to-1 now, omega-6 to omega-3. And most authorities say we should try to get to 4-to-1 because getting to 1-to-1 would be very, very hard. The other main ingredient of the Mediterranean diet is high fiber. So it is a high fiber diet, but it's more than that. But when I tell my patients, I said, if you can't buy the books, you don't want to have to hassle in your mind, think of olive oil and go high fiber, heavy, heavy fruits and vegetables. You'll be fine. Mostly fruit vegetables, mostly olive oil is your thing to cook in, and the rest of it, I guess you could figure out. It says moderate alcohol. I'll tell you what that is. The only alcohol studied with any benefit on the Mediterranean diet is red wine. I've done some reading where somebody suggested dark beer might be on there. Other people said rye whiskey. Other people said, but I've really not seen anything except red wine studied on the Mediterranean diet. Frankly, I don't think they've done a study where they had 7 versions of Mediterranean diet with different kinds of alcohols. For some reason, red wine stands out. They define, like I say the medical schools, define moderate use as 3 6-ounce glasses in men and 2 6-ounce glasses in women. Trouble is, you can't bank those. You can't say, well, I won't drink anything for 5 days and then I'll have a whole bottle on Friday night. Doesn't work that way. But if you're, and my mom and dad did this, and I do this to this day, I will drink 2 glasses of red wine almost every night. And my numbers are good. So it allows for, maybe mild's a better word, mild to moderate alcohol use. Eggs, chicken, fish, a lot of debate on eggs. I'll get to that in a minute, but I tell my patients who I'm counseling not to eat any eggs, so that's my bias there. But if you read the books, some say it's okay to eat some eggs, chicken and fish. I would love James' input here, especially the Crete diet.
Yeah. So I'll go in order here. So just to kind of emphasize again this ratio, and again, we're going to be answering questions at the end, so write them down. I really look forward to those questions. With this ratio, the Latin root word for inflammation is literally inflames, right? We all know fire is good. It keeps us warm. It cooks our food. Do we want to leave the stove on and go to work and just leave the fire going? No, we don't, right? That's where you get into the chronic inflammation realm. The omega-6, and this is a way oversimplification, but omega-6 rich foods is usually processed food. Processed crackers, processed grains, processed corn oil, like Dr. D said. And so when you're talking about omega-3s, a go-to is fish, which is great, can be great. Walnuts, chia seed, flaxseed, sea vegetables are also really great. Pretty much almost all vegetables have a trace amount of omega-3. When you get into more of the vegetables that have omega-3, leafy greens, collard greens, kale, spinach, right? Beet greens, great. And again, for me, why I love whole plant foods is you're talking about a whole package. You're not just getting omega-3s. Thank you. You're not just getting omega-3s, you're getting vitamin K and vitamin A and vitamin E, and you're getting everything else with it. So it's a positive shotgun effect where you're getting multiple benefits. High fiber, so fiber including one of them. We think of fiber as a thing that makes us go to the restroom, when in actuality, and I'm glad you guys finished eating, but 60% of our bowel movement is comprised of dead microbes. They're basically the old microbes coming out, the new ones are being repopulated. Guess what your healthy microbes love to eat? Fiber. And if you don't have enough fiber, guess what they eat? They eat your mucosal layer of your gut. You get into things like ulcerative colitis, gastritis, you get into diverticulitis. Why is that? They're eating you. Maybe because you're not eating enough fiber, right? So the big one here, moderate eggs, chicken, and fish. I also agree with Dr. D on that one with eggs. I don't eat eggs, obviously. 7% of so one of the main islands of focus when researching the Mediterranean diet was the island of Crete. And it was a big focus because they had such great health outcomes. Their diet was really interesting. Their health was very interesting. So it was actually the Rockefeller Center, the government of Greece, went to the Rockefeller Center and or organization, foundation, whatever you want to call it, they tasked them to do research on the whole island's population. They did extensive research. They found roughly 7% of their caloric intake came from any animal products. This is any. This is seafood, this is chicken, this is beef, this is lamb, whatever. Anything from an animal, 7%. So on a 2,000 calorie diet, we're talking 140 calories a day was a typical intake from an animal product, from these Cretians, they call them. Yeah. So, and you see here, it encourages antioxidants, polyphenols. Again, we can talk about red wine. That's been kind of banged in our head, right? Red wine has what? Does anyone know? The polyphenol? Resveratrol, right? So we hear a lot about resveratrol. There's even capsules that you could take of resveratrol at your local supplement store. But did you know right now is pomegranate season? Pomegranates actually have 3 times the amount of polyphenols as red wine. Red wine's great. Red wine's great. I love red wine. Pomegranates are also great. Beets have also polyphenols. You're talking about many, many different polyphenols going on, and you get that variety from all the different plant foods you eat with color. This is why something we've always said is eat the rainbow, right? Because you're eating all those polyphenols. Yeah. Okay, yeah, here we go. to also comment on saturated fat. When you think of saturated fat, you probably think of a stick of butter, right? Saturated fat comes from animals. Very rarely, with the exception of coconut oil, which is a whole nother rabbit hole with all the controversy around coconut oil and everything like that. But pretty much saturated fat comes from animal products. And I'm gonna keep clicking this one. So I'm just gonna show you guys everything here. So this is from the American Heart Association now, where if you have high cholesterol, and again, most Americans do. Most Americans have a high LDL cholesterol. They're saying 5 to 6% of your daily calories from saturated fat is what you should have. So again, I won't bore you with all the math, but let's say you have a 2,000 calorie diet, we're talking 11 to 13 grams. If I said, hey, only have 11 to 13 grams, you'd be like, what is that? What are you talking about? And again, I work with patients, guys, right? I work with my patients a lot. And so I'm not there to make your life difficult. I'm not there to make you a part-time dietitian. Okay, count your grams, count your calories, count your carbs, and then put it in an app, keep a journal. No one has time for that. 9 out of 10 of my patients do not want to do that. So here I'm just showing you for the sake of showing you for the Mediterranean diet and everything here. But you'll see some Atlantic salmon has about 2.6 grams. Chicken, what it has, ground turkey, what it has, extra lean ground beef, and about 2 eggs. So let me go back. So just this right here is roughly your 11 to 13 grams a day of saturated fat. So if you're eating these animal products in a day, you'd be okay under the American Heart Association standards. Okay? Now, if we look at feta cheese, which is very popular, and this is where we're talking about the spectrum of the Mediterranean diet. You go to a Mediterranean restaurant, I guarantee there's feta cheese all over the food, right? Now, feta cheese has 12.6 grams just in 3 ounces of feta cheese. And mind you, according to the American Heart Association, if you're having high cholesterol, you're pretty much, if you decide to have feta cheese, that's all the animal products you're going to have for that day. So your yogurt, other cheeses, eggs, bacon, whatever else you're eating, you've now gone over your saturated fat intake. And this is interesting because we have the American Heart Association saying this, and then when we cross-reference that with the Cretians, with the Mediterranean diet, it's interesting that they're within that kind of range, right? And as we continue, let's go back to that calories, right? Because the Cretians, they were going by calories, the amount of calories from animal products. So again, the same foods. We have salmon, we have skinless chicken, ground turkey, extra lean ground beef, 2 eggs. That, one of these servings equates roughly to 140 calories, give or take, right? You can have some salmon, maybe have 6 ounces of chicken, right? So double that roughly. You maybe have 3 ounces of ground turkey. You can maybe have a little more than the lean ground beef, or you can have 2 eggs. We're talking about in a day. Now that's what the Cretians were eating on the Mediterranean diet. Of course, there's a spectrum, right? Now, if we add cheese, and you can start to see why the Mediterranean diet does not have cheese. But again, there's a spectrum. You go to a Mediterranean restaurant, there's going to be cheese. Is that really the Mediterranean diet? We don't know. But when we cross-reference, we're cross-referencing the calories, the saturated fat. You want to opt more often not having the cheese, right? Not having the dairy products. And this is where you're getting more towards lean meats, if any. And a majority of that, when you're looking at your plate, 75% of that plate are going to be plant foods, right? So, I believe the next one. So when we say plant foods, what is that? What does that mean? Or any comments on that, Dr. D, with the previous slide? Yeah.
So if you came hoping that the doctor and the dietitian would get into a big fight and yell and cuss at each other, you've been disappointed up till now. So this is as close as we're going to get to a disagreement. I don't disagree with anything there. They're facts. One of the pros of the Mediterranean diet is that there, as I already mentioned, no cookie cutter, no guideline, no official Bible. There's no doubt it promotes olive oil and salmon compared to hamburger and butter, but there's no guideline on amounts. That's also a problem with the Mediterranean diet, is that I could see somebody like James saying, well, then by that logic, you could have 5 salmon fillets and still be in the Mediterranean diet. Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, that obviously none of us want, no doctor or dietitian wants their patient to have 5 salmon fillets at dinner. Technically, that's part of the Mediterranean diet, though. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that the slide that's up there is not recommendations of the Mediterranean diet. He clearly says that was the Crete and which was the original Mediterranean diet they looked at in the American Heart Association. So if you follow the Mediterranean diet, you can't eat salmon, you can't eat skinless chicken, and there really is no true percentage. Okay, you have the clicker? Yeah, okay. So now I did this slide, and maybe it's a little off, I don't know. But
I added to it.
okay. No, but your additions were good. Now, I know if I weren't a doctor, if I were just a normal kind of guy, and I went to my doctor, who's Dr. May here, and I needed my numbers to improve and I wanted to live longer, he would start to give me a speech like we've heard. This is what I would do. Hey, you're the doctor. I don't care about omega-3s and 6s and percentage and saturated whatever and mono and don't talk to me about that. Tell me what to eat. Tell me what not to eat. I'll do what you say. That's it. Make it really simple for me. So if you wanted to skip the rest of the lecture and forget what we already told you, I thought it'd be really simple. Here's what to eat and what not to eat, basically. So if you're going to eat starch, now obviously starch is not really good, right? We already decided that white bread isn't good. But if you're going to eat starch, we have yams, we have sweet potatoes, carrots, bulgur wheat. I don't know what amaranth is, but I'm sure James recommends it all the time. Faro, I'm a big Faro fan. My favorite Italian restaurant in Orange County is Il Faro down at the Newport Peninsula. If you haven't been there, go there. It's fantastic. They got 4 or 5 recipes with Faro. It's fantastic. It's the only place I know I can buy a lot of Faro cheap there. Millet, etc. What's bad? White carbs. I think what James took out of there was like whole wheat bread would be a starch that I would tell my patients it's okay to eat. Now, what kind of whole wheat we're going to get to later in the talk, but whole wheat bread, brown rice. Frankly, brown rice isn't the best compared to what he has on here, but brown rice is better than white rice. Potatoes, plant-based, so I think James would say potatoes are okay, but I recommend the potato skins would be even better if you want to peel them and put a little olive oil on them and put them in the oven. That'd be a good source of starch. So basically, the guy upstairs put the brown there for a reason. So when we refine our carbs and take the husk off, we're kind of disobeying God in a way. So leave the husk on everything. Don't take husks off, leave the husk on, and don't eat white carbs. Now, pasta is very controversial. The true Mediterranean diet would have you avoid pasta. But I can show anybody here several very good studies that pasta eaters from Italy have longer lives than non-pasta eaters from a different country. There appears to be something about the durum semolina wheat they make pasta out of that somehow changes the glycemic index or something. There's a reason why Italians do live longer lives, but those who visited there is a lot of pasta being eaten in Italy. So if pasta were really bad for you, it probably would show there. I tried to buy personally and recommend to my patients whole wheat pastas and farro and cornmeal and polenta, which is better than white pasta. But if you're going to eat a white carb because you're just lazy and you want to go to the store and buy the pasta off the shelf, I would pick pasta over rice and tortillas and those kind of things. Okay, how about fruits, veggies, legumes? Probably almost all of them, but I put cooked tomatoes because more studies have shown that if you cook the tomatoes, more antioxidants are released. Might be why they get away with it in Italy, because they put cooked tomato sauce on the pasta. So maybe there's something about that overcoming the pasta. Kale, spinach, avocado. These are usually in order of what's recommended as far as the antioxidants. Onions, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, beans, almost all beans. Beans are great. Lentils, chickpea, apple, almost all citrus, grapes, of course, going back to the red wine thing, dates and figs. There really probably aren't any bad fruits and veggies, frankly, but I put on there trying to fry them, deep fry them, tempura, that kind of thing, avoid that. And try not to sweeten the fruit. You know, these things you buy in the packages that are all sweetened, you want to avoid that. Herbs, there really is no bad herb I can think of. The ones I put here, like garlic should be in capital letters. That's been shown over and over again to have antioxidant properties, but basil, rosemary, sage should be a comma in pepper. Fat, you're best off with, I should have put tree on here, but tree nuts. Peanuts, yeah, okay, but almonds are the big one. And there's a million other tree nuts you could do, but try to stick with tree nuts. Sunflower seeds, olives are fantastic. We already mentioned avocado up above. Is that your extra virgin olive oil? Oh, okay. So the fat that I'm talking about here, because James added those, is being a weekend chef myself, is what do I have a chicken breast and I want to, skinless chicken breast, and I want to saute it. What do I saute it in? Or I have to pour something over my green salad because I won't eat a dry green salad. What do I pour over the salad? So extra virgin olive oil would be the obvious choice. What are bad fats? Well, all cheese, all butter, all fried food. Margarine has a trans fats, and I can keep going, but for the most part, avoid anything in that category. I mentioned tree nuts already, almonds, walnuts, macadamia. If you're going to avoid things that are honey roasted, salted. Basically, you want to have just the nut itself. We talked about alcohol, moderate red wine. For meat, we'll talk about fish in a second because really all fish isn't the same. But I always tell my patients, I'll let James give a counterpoint to this, that if you're going to pick a fish, you're not sure what fish to order at the restaurant, or you're in the market and you're trying to pick a fish, go with salmon if you have any doubt. But trout, tuna, despite what you may read, shrimp and lobster is fine. Poultry has to be skinless. Red meat, is that your word, rarely? Yeah. I say, yeah. James says rarely. I believe the correct red meat doesn't have to be rare. I think he means don't eat it often, not cook it rare. Anything with the word loin is going to be leaner than if he doesn't have loin in it. So when you think about it, a fillet is a tenderloin of beef. So if you do go to Morton's for your birthday and you do want to order a steak, try to order the fillet because that's a tenderloin, be much less fatty than a ribeye or a New York. If you're in the market buying pork because you like pork and you want to do something in a tortilla, a corn tortilla, a wheat tortilla, a pork tenderloin or a pork loin, much lower in fat than carnitas or pork chops or things that have the fat on it. So basically anything marbled is bad and anything non-marbled is better. So bad, processed meat. This is what we all love, but it's not part of the Mediterranean diet. Bacon, sausage, hot dogs, I can go on and on, but all those lunch meat, Oscar Mayer, those things should be avoided. Dairy, I think you put none there, right? Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. I usually say that some people say eggs are okay. I'm debatable on that. There are probably some cheeses that meet enough criteria. They're low enough in the bad stuff, but the ones I've eaten are inedible. They taste like rubber to me, and I don't recommend them to my patients. So I think that's accurate. I'll give the microphone to James.
And then I could do a whole hour just on this slide, but main points is first of all, starch has gotten a bad rap, right? We all hear stay away from potatoes, don't eat potatoes. It's usually what we do to potatoes that make it bad. If you look at the number one vegetable eaten by American children, it's French fries. It's potato, but it's French fries. That's not a whole food plant-based potato, right? And when you think of even potatoes in and of itself, there's so many colors of potatoes. There's purple potatoes, there's the yam, which is orange, there's red potatoes, there's white potatoes, there's even bluish potato. There's so many varieties of potatoes, but the idea is eat a variety, leave the skin on. You could do a little olive oil and oven roast them. You don't have to deep fry them in oil, slather them in sour cream and butter and bacon bits and feel like, why is this starch bad for me? Even though you've done everything else to it besides the starch. And when we're talking about starch, we're talking about gut health. If you're having any type of gut issues, from GERD and reflux to severe ulcerative colitis and IBS, starch is what's going to feed your good gut microbiome. You have trillions and trillions of these guys, 40,000 different species, they all love starch. Okay, so love potatoes, love the starchy foods in the whole form. Other thing I'll comment on is dairy. I know I get this a lot. With dairy, what do you mean you don't recommend dairy? And you know, to again, glad you're all done eating and glad we didn't have dairy here because that was done on purpose. Because when you think of what dairy is, what I tell my patients is, if I brought my wife in when she was breastfeeding my daughter and I had made some cheese out of my wife's breast milk and I offered you all some, would you take a piece? Who would take a piece? Dr. D would. I would. I mean, if I'm going to eat a cheese, it's going to be from human breast milk. Yet this is the power of marketing and advertising, ladies and gentlemen, because we've accepted a whole different species breast milk. And not only is it the breast milk of a whole different species, where if you're looking at would you do a dog breast milk or rat breast milk, or there's different animal breast milks out there. We chose the cow. And it's for a whole different species. You look at a human child who walks in a year versus a calf who walks in an hour. Of course that breast milk is going to be of a different nutritional composition, right? Different hormones, different macros. It's a completely different thing. And especially if you get grossed out drinking another human's milk, yet you're drinking a whole different animal's milk. Power of marketing, right? Because when we look at dairy, increases risk of Parkinson's, increases risk of a whole host of diseases, lots of cholesterol, lots of saturated fat, everything we don't want. So to stay on time, we'll move on, but wanted to give you that perspective shift and kind of have you look at cheese, which is coagulated breast milk fat, a little differently.
This is yours, I think.
All right, so safe advice. You know, there's 7 days in a week, roughly 21 main meals if you're eating 3 meals a day. Your plate should be a majority of plant foods, is the point. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I'm not saying never eat cheese, but I'm giving you a new perspective on cheese, I bet, right? So, you know, it's just a majority of what you're eating, whether it's a meal or a snack, should be plant foods. My mantra is plants protect. And again, whole plant foods. Small serving if you are eating lean meats, you know, 3 ounces, you saw that, it kind of fits in well with the saturated fat. 3 ounces, palm of your hand, fits in with the kcals, depending what Mediterranean diet you're looking in. Again, there's lots of room there. Again, I meet my patients, and I think we all do, meet them where they are. If they love cheese and if they're eating fast food, I'm not going to be like, okay, you're going to do a big plant-based Mediterranean diet and you're going to cook from scratch and they've never cooked and you're not going to eat fast food anymore. And no, it's things like we're going to replace one piece of cheese with a little bit of maybe a cashew cheese and see how you like that, because there's cheese made of cashew. It's the idea, instead of taking cow fat, you're taking cashew fat and you're doing the same process and it tastes delicious. That's it. Maybe that's all they want to do. And so it's about meeting everyone, meeting the population where they are. I always start with adding. So again, the average American has about 15 grams of fiber, right? It's recommended to get around 30. I, on a typical day, get maybe 80, okay? So there's a spectrum there, but we can all agree, I think the top health professionals agree, that Americans are low in fiber. So instead of me saying, I'm going to take away all your cheese, I'm going to take away all your meat, I'm going to take away this and that, I say, let's add. What's your favorite vegetable? What's your favorite fruit? Let's add it. What's one you're interested in trying? Okra is especially gut healing. Maybe you've never tried that before, and you're of that mindset of, I want to do something different. Or I don't want to do something different, just give me broccoli, I like that. Okay, then do more broccoli. So it's all about adding. Again, this is from the American Heart Association. If you need to lower your blood cholesterol, reduce saturated fat to no more than 5 to 6% of your total calories in a day. Again, for the average person, that could be 3 ounces of feta, and you're done. That could be some lean meats. It's up to you.
So again, I want to remind, my patients who I counsel and those who came tonight to hear the Mediterranean diet talk, I'll repeat the mantra. The Mediterranean diet does not legislate percentages, numbers, and except for alcohol, I don't think they usually use the word moderate, rarely, a lot, a little. It's more categories. So when you see these things about 5 to 6, the American Heart Association, I don't think has endorsed the Mediterranean diet. I don't think they've unendorsed it. I just don't think. So remember that we're talking about Mediterranean diet. I'm thinking in broad strokes. Avocado good, Hershey's chocolate bad. I mean, I'm thinking big stuff. And when I I was proud of myself. Last month I went with friends. I think it was to not Morton's, Mastro's in Costa Mesa. It was somebody's birthday, and I cheat on Sundays. This was a Friday night. Went around the table. We're in a ribeye, New York, ribeye, New York. You think me, my wife had the ribeye, and I asked for the salmon. And everybody's like, "You're at Mastro's, you're getting salmon?" I said, "I bet it's really good salmon here." I'm thinking. I said, "It's a diet I follow." And I think my salmon was just as good or better than their steaks. But I didn't say give me 3 ounces of salmon or, the percentage of, I eat the whole thing. I don't know. I'm an omnivore. I eat anything. So just keep in mind big broad strokes there. Okay. This slide didn't come out in columns, but big controversy on fish. I believe James has much stronger opinions than I have, so I'll let him go on about this. But the FDA and EPA has put out a directory avoiding unsafe fish in women of childbearing age, especially the pregnant or breastfeeding, and interestingly, caregivers of young children. However, most of the literature is recommending these be followed. Now, you can make an argument that some of these should be like never, but they recommend, the FDA recommends no more than 3 fish meals a week. Not because fish is bad for you, we're talking about contaminants and diseases or things you might get from the fish meat, not that the fish itself is unhealthy. So the best are what you see there, and there's things there that could be controversial, but this is directly from the FDA website, so it's not controversial in that way. Catfish is good. Salmon we already talked about. Clams are fine. Despite what you may think, scallop and lobster and shrimp are not bad things. Well, up to 3 times a week. Squid, oyster, trout, crab, those are fine. Once a week are things that you may not have thought were that bad. Carp, Chilean sea bass, halibut, mahi-mahi, tuna, most tunas. If you're a sushi lover and you like going to get the tuna at the sushi bar, once a week, not every night. No safe amount, marlin. I don't know people who catch marlin every weekend, but if you do. But shark, obviously. Orange roughy. Swordfish is the big one. A lot of swordfish on our menus in Southern California. And big eye tuna. Those are considered bad in any amount. Not that you should never ever eat it the rest of your life, but you got to be worried about contaminants, especially mercury. I'll let James comment on this slide.
And so yeah, this is kind of a side note where it's just kind of to be aware of. It goes back to basic biology where the tiny fish get eaten by the slightly bigger fish and get eaten by the slightly bigger fish. It's something called bioaccumulation. Now, the FDA is mainly concerned with mercury. However, there's lead, cadmium, pesticides. There's other things out there, PVCs, dioxins. I could keep going, as you could tell. And so a lot of these things are categorized as persistent organic pollutants. And, industry, the plastics that we have everywhere, things like that. That's why there's a big movement of banning plastics and things like that. But it all goes back to the simple idea of bioaccumulation. So just to be aware of, this is what the FDA guidance is, and just watching it as it progresses. I think in the next 5 years, for sure, we're going to see more and more studies on this as well.
So with all this talk about the Mediterranean, why do it? There's typo on here, I apologize, because there's very good, strong evidence, and let's not compare it, in this part of the talk, let's not compare it to the other ones, let's just talk about it on its own, that it improves your blood pressure, improves your blood sugar, and improves your lipids, the big three numbers when I do your physical that I'm looking at. There was a 2014 meta-analysis for those who skipped that part of your college education. That's one of the more detailed scientific analysis. Like meta-analysis is very specific. So I'll make a statement. I believe it's true. I wouldn't say it if it's not true. I'd love anybody to bring me data to suggest otherwise, not challenging you to prove me wrong, to educate me, because maybe I'm wrong. But it's the only diet of any type that's been shown to reduce all-cause mortality. Now, all-cause mortality, scientists throw that name around. Plain English, dying for any reason, like any cause of death. You're going to live longer with the Mediterranean diet if you're a proponent of that and follow it strictly, if you don't follow it. Both, it lowers your risk of fatal and non-fatal heart attack, fatal and non-fatal stroke. The next one is opinion. The first three bullets are fact and can't be refuted. The fourth bullet is my own opinion. It could be wrong. The study that kept looking at more and more, if you look at just olive oil studies, and that's all, just looked up olive oil and studies, that's probably one of the denominators. I don't think if you follow the Mediterranean diet and you refuse to use olive oil at all and just skip that, I'm not sure you get the same numbers. Because when they compared olive oil to non-olive oil heavy diets, the olive oil diets did have lower heart disease. Multiple studies have shown a lower risk of adult onset diabetes. All cancer has been shown to reduce by 6%. The study I remember reading a few years ago that impressed me was colon cancer was down. Makes sense, high fiber would theoretically lower colon cancer. But for reasons I can't explain, breast cancer is the #1 cancer lowered by the Mediterranean diet. And it might go back to some of the things James was saying. Maybe there are toxins and poisons that we're not aware of yet that would trigger the mitosis of the cancer cells. The Mediterranean diet prevents those. I don't know. There's documented lower risk of both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Now, when you're comparing this to the paleo and all the fad diets he's talking about, even if some of those had studies showing that blood pressure is reduced, none of them have documented lower risk of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and breast cancer. So the benefits of the Mediterranean diet are huge. And it isn't, I wouldn't have put the bullet up here if it was one study. It's multiple studies reproduced over and over again showing the health benefits. I'm not saying that no other diet would do this, but I am saying no other diet's been shown to reduce all-cause mortality. It makes sense if you have fatty liver, because it's a relatively low-fat diet, and you lose weight, and that should treat that. And I've already mentioned the longer lifespan. So, how do you build? This kind of is my version of James' slide. So, I think it goes hand in hand. I think it's pretty consistent. Eat primarily plant-based foods. On that statement, I am 100% in agreement with James. Primarily plant-based foods. Fruits and vegetables. Legumes are fantastic. All beans are great. Tree nuts, fantastic. Seeds are great. Tomato is great. Avocado is great. Kale, green beans, almonds, blackberries, chickpeas. If that could be the bulk of your diet, or if you can make a big, huge salad for lunch with those things in there, you're on your way to lower Alzheimer's and lower Parkinson's. Don't use butter. If you're going to cook or put stuff on your bread, extra virgin olive oil. Use herbs, not salt. Really, there's nothing about the Mediterranean diet that prohibits salt. It just makes sense because salt's going to raise your blood pressure. That's been shown. So try to stick with oregano and other types of herbs to put on top of your food. Limited poultry, cheese, and eggs. I think James changed my slide here. I would have put extremely next to cheese, extremely limited cheese.
Yeah.
I would say poultry, fish, and meat are fine. The amounts are between you and your conscience and what you think you need to get full, I guess. And red wine is an alcoholic choice. Now, I made a sample meal idea, and I think James kind of fixed this one too.
Just to comment real quick on the last slide too as well. I don't want my patients to think all you're gonna eat is salad. Okay, you're just gonna have a salad for breakfast, salad for lunch, and a salad for dinner, and you're good. You're on the Mediterranean diet. We're talking about a lot of the foods I love to eat growing up. I still eat. I make my daughter a plant-based Mediterranean-style mac and cheese. How do I do that? And this is just one example of many. The cheese sauce has a base of of a natural yeast that tastes like cheese. It's delicious. Potato, peppers, and soaked cashews for fat. You blend it up, you have a nacho cheesy cream sauce, and it's delicious. So different things like that, where you're playing with plant foods to turn them into even better versions of themselves that taste great. And there are many restaurants out there popping up to prove this. But this is part of the visit, depending where we get to, where I teach you new recipes, I show you new resources, and my patients do really well with that.
Since this was my slide originally, I'll go ahead through it. I'll let James do it. I don't disagree with anything on here. Well, yes, I do. So I'll give you my version of this. Oatmeal, good. Now, steel cut, yeah, better, but oatmeal, good. As far as all the stuff he put on there, fine, those are good. But oatmeal, good. Because I can tell you, if I saw him as a patient, he told me that, I'd say, good, James, thank you. I will do that. And I'm going to the car, hell if I'm going to do that. I'm going to have oatmeal, and I'll throw some blueberries and blackberries on it. I'll do that, but I'm not going to do all that weird stuff. So now, if you guys would, that's better, but I'm not going to. And if I'm not going to, I'm not going to make you do it. I don't agree with James on muesli. He has a brand coming up on the slides that he believes is very good, and it probably is, and I support buying that brand. But I was in an airport lounge this summer, and they had like a breakfast layout, and one of the things said, it was Cheerios, and there was muesli. I don't like Cheerios, even though it's very healthy, so I took the muesli. It was full of sugar. I could taste the sugar. And it said muesli. So look on the label if you're going to buy muesli. I think correctly made and packaged, it's very good. But Grape Nuts is an actual brand, and Grape Nuts, if you get just the plain Grape Nuts, high in fiber and low in sugar. And I think we agree on the avocado toast. That's a perfect breakfast. His lunch is vegetable-based, and I don't know of any evidence that it has to be vegetable-based, so I would not encourage my patients to eat a vegetable-based lunch. He could do that if you visit him, but I don't tell my patients to do that. I say eat a salad, and if you're like me and you want protein, throw a skinless chicken, half a chicken breast on there. Oh, okay, I don't see that, but okay. Oh yeah, fish. Well, again, I don't know if, this is the Mediterranean diet, not James' diet. So the Mediterranean diet does allow chicken, it does allow fish, and it's hard for me to bring soup to work, and it's hard for me to cook soup at work, so I can do a salad easier than a soup as a rule. So I would say a salad with, in my case, I need a protein, so I believe as long as it's skinless poultry or lean meat or fish, I'm in good shape. On dinner, he has a vegetarian dinner. I don't eat vegetarian dinners as a rule, so I would nod in his office and go to the car, and I would go to Vaughn's and I would buy a chicken breast and a filet for dinner that night. So I would say, my meal ideas are more a skinless poultry of some kind, shrimp perhaps, fish, maybe a lean meat. Nothing wrong with the vegetarian entrees. My favorite that I make a lot is eggplant sandwiches, where you take the eggplant, fry them in olive oil, and in between put kale or arugula. I like arugula a lot, and make little eggplant sandwiches.